What is the most ridiculous thing someone has ever tried to convince you is true? Keeping religion and politics out of it. That humans had in fact evolved to hold extra space in their stomachs for dessert. I thought she was making the same light-hearted joke many of us have when we're about to indulge, even after a full meal. She was not, and boy was she mad. In Japan they have a word for it, betsuboda. Don't quote me on spelling, which means separate stomach for desserts. They don't really believe in a second stomach, but it's akin to our colloquialism of there's always room for jello. Two of my friends were absolutely certain that West Virginia wasn't a state. They tried to convince me for like half an hour before I pulled out a map, and even then they weren't sure I was right. I grew up in West Virginia and traveled a fair amount as a kid. I ran into all kinds of people who were convinced that West Virginia was just the western part of Virginia. I was always kind of amazed, because the stereotype was that we were stupid, not the rest of the country. My brother once told me, if you eat sesame seeds, hamburgers will grow in your belly. Believed until 7. I've missed out on surumen hamburgers. It's sad. That sounds awesome. You'll never go hungry with your endless supply of internal hamburgers. My hillbilly neighbor in Pennsylvania swore he created a perpetual motion machine. That was a long, painful conversation. Lisa, in this house we obey the laws of thermodynamics. That a planetarium is a place where plants are grown. After arguing about it for a minute, this person said, "No, sorry, you're right. I was thinking of a planetarium." When you get busted bullshitting, keep bullshitting more. Line manager at a job I had years back was convinced that the magic tattoos that he had protected him from being stabbed cut short. In the event that someone did manage to hurt him, that just meant that that person had more powerful magic tattoos. That the mind was faster than light. See, when you turn off a light bulb, you can see the far end of the light wave as it comes towards you. You can tell because the light gradually grows dimmer, rather than turning off instantly. No, actually it's just that the bulb dims gradually. I convinced the same person that Latvia has no animals. They all emigrated to Estonia, and University of Wales was a college where you learn to speak to whales. My mom successfully convinced me that gas pumps are voice automated when I was 10, 1994. It was my first time pumping gas and she said to put in $20 worth. I asked how to make it stop at 20 and she told me it was voice automated. No big deal. I wait until it gets to about 15 and mutter stop at 20. It keeps going full steam ahead and I started getting nervous. By the time it got to $19 I was screaming stop at 20. It slowed down. She had prepaid, and I thought I had succeeded, until I noticed everyone staring. She wouldn't even leave right away because she was laughing too hard to drive. TLDR, my mom is an evil genius and I was a gullible 10-year-old. Your mom is great. One afternoon, at a buffet, I had the opportunity to try tripe, which it turns out is disgusting. However, the experience of trying animal intestines was one I wanted to share with my friends, but through the course of discussing it with them, they were convinced tripe was in fact a type of fish. The argument lingered on as such things did in pre-smartphone days, until I emailed them a Wikipedia article proving I was right, and they were wrong. However, they refused to let it go. One friend emailed me fake dictionary excerpts, claiming to be from the dictionary of a lawyer he worked with. The other friend went even further. He set up a fake Facebook account to set up a fake Facebook page called Tripe, the misunderstood fish, and got his friends to join it, then forwarded me this link until I would relent that it's possible that tripe may also be a type of fish. They now will not let it go, insisting that they got me. I had a frying pan that wouldn't sit evenly on the burner, so I weighted it down with a rock. My roommate asked me why I was cooking bacon with a rock in the pan and I told her it was a weight loss stone and when you cooked with it, it would absorb fat, sugar and calories without the food losing flavor. I came home one day later that week and she was using it to make spaghetti. A kid at my high school attempted to convince everyone that there was a senior at the school who had a child who was a freshman at the same high school. He failed to realize the kid who supposedly had a child would have been 3 when he got laid and got a girl pregnant. Unless he failed senior year a lot. There is a guy that I work with that is completely convinced that one of the moons of Mars, Sparbus, I believe, is actually a massive spacecraft that was destroyed during the Angelic Wars. For those of you that are unfamiliar, that's the interstellar war between angels and the legions of Satan, OBIEI. As for evidence, he points to its oblong shape and the craters on its side resulting from machine gun fire. And now, a reading from Chewbacca 327. RRRRGLGLGLGL. May the force be with you. The NORAD Santa tracker. When I found out he was fake was the same moment I realized that the internet could lie to me. La 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 la, I can't hear you, la 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 la. I knew a guy who tried to convince me of the hollow earth theory. Basically that the earth is hollow and that there is a whole race of subterranean humans who branched from us thousands of years ago, living inside the earth, and that he had been there and met them. I was driving in the country when we drove over bus strips before a stop sign. One girl I was in the car with asked what those were there for. The other girl quickly replied, so that blind people know when to stop. TLDR. I hang out with dumb girls. When I was 8, my dad convinced me his fingernails didn't grow. Said it was because he kept biting them. He did this as a way to get me to stop biting my nails so they would grow out and be nice and ladylike. Fast forward to 16-year-old self. Sitting in church with my dad and saw that there was a couple of millimeters of growth on his nails. Got so excited and showed him that his nails had started to grow. He had completely forgotten the little fib he told me and said that they always grew. Only reason I couldn't scream out in frustration was because I was sitting in church during a sermon. Still hasn't let me live it down. That is adorable. I can imagine that being a difficult moment to live down. There was an ancient civilization more technologically advanced than our modern society, but all traces of it were destroyed, including any relics from that era and any documentation. If you don't believe my friend, the evidence is clearly there. There is no evidence any of that happened. Just like what would happen if a secret society existed and all knowledge of its existence disappeared. Whenever someone tells me it is their birthday, I always tell them, wow, same day as Hitler. I like you. My husband, in cahoots with my grandmother, tried to convince me that marshmallows grew in bushes, kinda like cotton. For a moment I started to believe them. I'm pretty dang gullible. Then logic kicked in. Wait a minute now. I know how you feel. On farms they cover hay bales with white sheets in winter to protect them. When I was 6 my dad convinced me that it was a marshmallow farm. I went to school telling kids that marshmallow grew on farms and got laughed at by everyone including the teacher. When I was little my dad tried to convince me that he was sent to Earth by his parents from a different planet. He basically tried to convince me he was Superman before I knew who Superman was. I was almost convinced when he showed me that at night you could see the planet. It was actually Venus. I forgot what planet he called it. Nobody convinced me of this, but I had a cousin who I did this to. This happened sometime when we were 6 or so, I think. So there was this large depression in my backyard and my cousin would sleep over with me every now and then since we were like sisters. She asked me why it was back there, and due to my not really knowing myself, I told her it was because there was an underground fairy city there. At night, a giant crack would open and thousands of tiny fairies would fly out, look for any open windows nearby, fly in, and kidnap children to feed to their babies, and once it was nothing but a skeleton they would make it stand guard to the city. It took me a while but I convinced her. She believed this for years. Even after I had completely forgotten I told her this. She slightly hates me whenever this gets brought up. TLDR. Convinced my cousin that there were fairies in my backyard that would eat you at night if you left the window open. My boyfriend still insists that the grease stain on the carpet in the living room came from the old lady that lived there before us dying on that spot. He has a whole story about it. He goes into great detail about how her decomposition fluids drained onto the floor and no one found her for weeks and weeks because she was lonely and had no friends. I live in Minnesota and my ex is from Florida. His first winter up here I convinced him that 6-foot tall penguins migrate to MN from Canada for the winter and will fight you in the streets if you don't stay out of their way. My mother believes because we use machines to create parts for other machines, that the machines will catch on and begin to craft an armada of machine warriors to conquer us. We have gotten into hour-long conversations on the topic. She fails to see reason, but it has turned into a big family topic and my mom says she is just waiting for the day when we are proven wrong and machines rule the world. Skynet will become self-aware. My dad believes that there is an anti-gravity room at NASA. He says you can go in there and flip a switch and off goes gravity. I keep trying to explain to him that he's talking about the Vomit Comet, a plane that travels upward at an angle and then back down on an arc, negating gravity for brief amounts of time. His response is always nope, anti-gravity room. I was 8 years old and at a friend's house. We were learning about the solar system in school and we were chatting about it. We talked about the earth rotating around the sun. And my friend's mom told us we had it backwards, that the sun rotated around the earth. I was flabbergasted, because as a kid, not only did I know she was very wrong, but I had known this fact long before it was taught in class. I wondered how she could go 37 years without ever coming across the truth or being proved wrong by someone else. It was an 8-year-old me who challenged her and told her she was wrong. I remember going home and telling my parents and we all enjoyed a laugh and an eye roll together. One of my friends vigilantly defended the notion that in Xbox matchmaking games, there is a person at a computer who organizes all the teams and selects the maps. I had to convince my ex that the lava in lava lamps is actually real lava that is harvested by the Lava Farmers Union, LFU. She spent 24 years thinking it was just wax until I enlightened her. The Lava Farmers Union. Going to heck and back so you don't have to. Here is one from the opposite perspective. Myself and some other friends at school convinced a guy in our class you were supposed to have 3 testicles. We told him the line down his sack was where the doctors cut him open when he was a baby and removed one. The joke went on for years, but eventually we told him, nice guy, but not the sharpest knife in the drawer. I enjoy convincing others that improbable facts are true. I once convinced an entire grade 9 English class that, because horses are scarce there, giant ants are lassoed, tamed and ridden in South America. Not to me, but to my friends. My dad often used to convince my friends I was an alien. Backstory: when I was less than a year old, I had surgery to remove a cyst on my face. They went in through the top of my head and peeled my scalp and skin down to operate so as not to leave a scar on my face. As a result, I have a big scar across my head which my hair covers for the most part, but was still pretty visible when I was 5'8". I also grew up with just my dad as a single parent, which in the 80s was incredibly strange. My dad is a scientist and often had lots of different rocks and plants around the house, including a large piece of aluminum. My dad would pull my friends aside and tell them my secret. They never believed him until he showed them the aluminum, claiming it to be part of my spaceship I came from. He'd say things like, why do you think her mom isn't around? She's in space, and haven't you ever seen the scar on Jessica's head? That's from when they transplanted her alien brain to a human brain. Oh dad. My godmother convinced me and my mother that she had won the lottery and that she was coming around with a limo to pick us all up and take us on a holiday within the hour. Felt like crap when we found out the truth and my mother didn't talk to her for a week, but my godmother just laughed and laughed. Some people don't know how to be funny. A kid I went to high school with was full of this crap. Ocean is salty because whale semen. Chewing tobacco has no harmful side effects. Sleeping more than 8 hours takes 5 minutes of life per hour of sleep. And he was always so convinced that he was right and unflappable, and I remember constantly wanting to punch his smug butthole face. Kevin, if you're reading this, go peg yourself with a brick, you goddamn douchebag. When I was 10, some giant fat dude with a beard came to my place to try to convince me I was a wizard using cheap visual tricks. What a tool. You're a skeptic, Harry. I just got a new job and no one knows that I am a magician by trade in that place. One time during lunch, as I was being introduced to my new colleagues, my boss was giving a small talk about the phrase, if you believe in something hard enough it will come true. Well, I said it is true. Then I proceeded on grabbing a spoon, concentrated hard, and the spoon bended before their eyes. Well, any magician redditor here knows exactly how this is accomplished. Jaws drop. F-word is all over the place. Then my boss took me aside and offered me to be a motivational speaker. I felt guilty. I once picked up a puzzle at a dollar store that was a map of Canada. It had pictures of Canadian animals on it, one of them being a penguin. I made it my question of the day at the daycare I worked at, which of these animals is not native to Canada? A dad of one of the kids couldn't figure it out, and when I mentioned that penguins are only native to the southern half of the planet, he spent half an hour arguing that I was wrong. TL. Dr. Penguins are native to Canada. My brother tried to convince me to invest in Iraqi dinar. He said eventually the dinar would be equal to millions of American dollars and we would all be millionaires in due time. This was about a year ago. No one is a millionaire. My other brother also used to buy about 10 lottery tickets every day because he thought he'd figured out some system where every one at 9 lottery tickets is a guaranteed winner. I am Nigerian Prince. I need your help. I have $200 million and I can transfer IT to your account on behalf of my fater, a Nigerian king. Well, I tried to convince myself when I was younger that L'Oreal Kids shampoo was actually tear-free. I then tested my theory by putting the shampoo in my hands and rubbed it in my eyes. And it was not tear-free. Not tear-free at all. As a 6-year-old Dutch boy I convinced a friend that I was fluent in English and read him a book and sounds that I thought sounded English. I flipped the pages at an according pace. He on the other hand convinced me that he could understand English well enough to be read a book in it. He really liked the book. It was about He-Man. Such a shame no one will ever read this. That there is a difference between good astrologers and bad astrologers. Also, that tarot cards actually mean something. My ex-girlfriend's mum read them for people, but fortunately never tried to do it for me. Was very glad to learn at a later date that she knew my opinion on it, and felt no more need to press me on it than I did her. I have my opinions on tarot card. They're phony, but that doesn't mean they're not interesting. This may get buried, but here goes. In 3rd grade we had this teacher named Mrs. Kelly. She was very Irish, which was cool when St. Patty's Day rolled around. Basically a week before St. Patty's Day, she told the whole class to partner up because we are making leprechaun traps. Like elaborate leprechaun traps, because she was friends with a leprechaun named Seamus and he was going to visit the classroom. She gave us each a plastic gold coin and told us Seamus could not resist the temptation, so we needed to build traps to try to catch him and to stop him from stealing the gold. Anyway, me and my friend Jeff got straight to work planning our trap. It was a cardboard box about 2 feet by 3 feet, and it had 3 chambers. The first chamber had an iron gate trapdoor, like on the front of a castle that we got from a play set. We jerry-rigged it so it would close as soon as Seamus entered. That was followed by baby powder on the ground so that his footprints would leave tracks to make sure the trap worked. The second chamber we layered with thumbtacks and Elmer's glue, hoping we would either impale the poor bugger or get him stuck. The last chamber held the gold coin and was guarded by me and Jeff's most elite Green Army men. Because to an 8-year-old, you are pretty sure your toys come alive when you are not looking. So, the day finally arrives, and all the other kids have set up their traps and me and Jeff are pretty sure we are gonna catch this sucker. The lunch bell rings, and Mrs. Kelly says that she saw Seamus earlier and he would probably be stopping by soon. The class goes to lunch and then recess and we all come back, excited to see if any of us had caught the little bastard. And what do you know? No Seamus. But wait, all of our traps have been sprung. In our trap, the trap door was closed, but propped open a tad bit with a pencil. There were tiny footprints in the baby powder, and same with the glue, but there was zigzagging around the thumbtacks. All of our top army men were knocked over, presumably dead, and the gold coin was gone. Mrs. Kelly played along and told us Seamus had great fun getting past all of our traps. The real story, obviously, is Mrs. Kelly went to great lengths to convince all of her 3rd graders that leprechauns were real and that we all had been foiled by one crafty mother. Just the attention to detail and how she went about deceiving us and making it look like an actual leprechaun had sprung our traps was pretty ridiculous. And you know what? Me and Jeff didn't realize it was her for another couple years. That's actually really freaking cool that someone would do that. I know a guy who tells everyone that aircraft shouldn't have the exhaust trails we see behind them. He says they are chemtrails or chemical trails and are visible because the government dropping chemicals on us to keep us stupid. I asked him why every single plane does this. He said you have no idea how much control they have, man. Well, I convinced a group of acquaintances that I had a pet kangaroo as a child. The best part was I would increase the lie, tell them I was totally lying and they shouldn't believe any of it, and then tell more of the story. Overall I had like 6 ppl convinced I had a pet kangaroo named Joey. I once convinced my ex that goats lay eggs. I'm kind of a science nerd, always reading anything I can get my hands on, so I was able to convince him pretty easily. At first, he said, "No freaking way, you're an idiot." Then I went into details about how the goat and the platypus share a common link and they're the only 2 mammals in the world that lay eggs. He pondered this for a second and still wasn't convinced. I then twisted it by saying, "Well, why do you think they have little goat houses with straw in them? They go in there to lay their eggs. The incubation period is anywhere from 30-45 days. I was laying it on pretty thick with random, nonsensical data from my head. A lot of it was pretty dang absurd and I couldn't even believe I was telling it all so smoothly. By the time I was finished, he had his mouth open and said, "I can't believe I didn't know. My grandma had a goat growing up and I never saw her give birth. Just one day there was a baby goat. She must have spent weeks hatching him. He totally bought it, hook, line and sinker." It wasn't until 2 years into our relationship that I casually mentioned it and admitted it was all made up. He got mad. Like, really, really mad. He was so totally convinced and I shattered his brain. Again, he was actually pretty dumb. I don't know why I spent so much time with him. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.